Everyone, I'm Becky and I'll be taking you through the webinar today on the art of leadership. Leadership is always a hot topic, I would say, especially with us as well. But we're going to be looking at the webinar in two parts today. Firstly, looking at what leadership is and dealing with the questions of course, is there an ideal leadership style? And the second part will be discussing the combinations of styles or the culture of the leadership, and obviously their development areas as well. So as I was saying, leadership is always interesting and hotly debated topic in our industry, and it has obviously many different viewpoints as well. It's certainly a very popular behavioural report with many of our clients, and interestingly enough, our clients customise their reports so differently for their leadership requirements. It's really amazing at the extent of diversity for one subject. So today's webinar is mainly based on how the extended DISC model, we call that eDISC model, fits with leadership today. Because of time restraints, I can't go into every single facet of how we use it, but I can give you some theory and some basic applications. So with the highly competitive nature of business today, along with the diversity of things like culture, generation, and the capabilities of the workforce, it has placed an even sharper emphasis on the importance of leadership. You pretty much find every month, well I know I do, that there's a new how-to book, business book coming out on modern leadership and how it should be done. You'll also find Facebook blogs, seminars, courses, etc. I mean, you get the picture. So does this new emphasis and focus on leadership mean that we have identified the perfect leadership style? Is there a template for you to follow for a successful leader? Well, the answer to that one, of course, is yes and no. So I guess one of the things to start with is think of all the successful leaders you know and think about how different their leadership styles are and the situations that they are leading in. Probably very diverse situations, I would think, but they are still successful. So why is that? Well, there's been many studies undertaken on just this very thing, and interestingly enough, they have revealed that there are common traits that people display and that what many look for in a leader as well. The base point for this seems to be centered around the word trust. Trust seems to be that sticking point for people to want to be led. However, trust has to be gained and is certainly not a right of inheriting a management title. As the saying goes, you have to have followers to be a leader. So trust, it would seem, is gained from two basic factors. Firstly, competence in getting the job done, and secondly, the character on how the job gets done. So, however, in the manner in which the individual leaders demonstrate and communicate the common traits while doing this or not doing this will be a reflection of things like their own natural behavioural style, the behavioural style of the target audience or the team members, and the nature of the leadership challenge situation facing the team and their business environment. But we'll look at this in a bit more depth shortly. So, one thing I often get asked, especially in my training, is, Becky, is there an ideal extended DISC behavioural style for a leader or manager? Well, all I can say is, if there was, it would be a surefire way to make all leaders and managers successful by following that certain recipe. We could constantly recruit that same behavioural style in every organisation, knowing that they would be good. But the answer, I'm afraid, as you probably guessed, is no. Of course, as mentioned, studies do show that there are common traits found in successful leadership, but there is no one extended DISC style that is better than the others at being in a leadership position. There may be some natural leadership behaviours or management behaviours, and we'll look at this as well. So why is this, you may ask? Well, I think by going back a step and defining what leadership and management is will help us answer this question. So there are many different definitions of what management is and furthermore what constitutes a leader. Some say they are both management, but one has a driver or a task focus and one enhances with people focus. But what is agreed is that both types of management/leadership styles are needed to be an effective manager or leader, as they are complementary to each other and very much linked. So Extended DISC does recognise the differences in the two management styles, as it's pretty important for us to help map which style that person might have a natural tendency towards. So, however, for this purpose of this webinar, it might be easier for us to see it as a manager being a driver or task-oriented, and a leader being an enhancer or people-oriented. I probably refer to the collective term of management and leadership as, in general, just leaders for now as we go through this webinar though. From the two descriptions, we can gauge a very important issue. An effective leader knows themselves. They know which style of leadership they tend to veer towards, and they learn to combine it with the other style. So managers learn to soften around their people, while leaders learn to toughen up. They understand their strengths and development areas. It's this awareness that makes them great, as they can adapt themselves when needed. They play to their strengths and potentially surround themselves with others that can help deal in those development areas that they have. So now we have a basic definition. Let's go back to the question of, is there an ideal Extended DISC style for leadership? And as you know, the answer was no. But why isn't there? So let's take a look at 3 reasons. Firstly, as you see on the screen there, each individual leader has their own behavioural styles, which means their own strengths and also their own areas of development that's unique to them. These traits, as well as their learnt behaviours and experience, all help shape them into the supervisor or manager that they are. That means that maybe they might be more natural in some areas of what we expect of a leader than in others. So what do we expect from our leaders? Well, we would like them to have fantastic communication skills that sees them connect with people. They need to be adaptable to changes or unseen issues that pop up. Fast but fair decisions. Ideally, they should give critical feedback and preferably encouragement to motivate. Furthermore, they should be clear and concise with goals of their organisation, have strategic ability for future thinking, be comfortable with detail, facts, figures, all by leading by example, coaching, being approachable, fair, having empathy, keeping a positive atmosphere, and of course being friendly while holding people accountable. Quite a list, but you get the drift. I think we expect a lot of our leaders, in fact quite often superwoman or superman. So that brings us then to our second point. Don't forget as well, as the leaders having their own set of unique behavioural traits, so do the people that they are leading, their team. Of course, it's more likely that that team will be more comprised of a variety of behavioural styles as well. So for example, where someone may not be feeling, not need a feeling of connection with their boss, another style might find it very important to be connected, to build trust with them. Where one team member might want more instructions, plans and schedules from their leader, another member might like spontaneous, friendly approach and be more autonomous in their decision making. So each style's expectations and their needs vary enormously. You can start to see how some of these leaders might not hit the nail on the head all the time with every member unless they are aware and can adapt to the member's needs. So lastly, each situation requires different interactions and behaviours from people. Obviously, the people that they are leading, the culture of the company, the product or service they might be selling, every situation is different. Each interaction is different. So therefore, unless we know the exact situation, we cannot know the ideals of the best fit for the leader. Therefore, all of these things mentioned influence what an effective leader is for that particular situation. So let's look at a few examples. It might be that an operations manager position where the leader might need to be results oriented, manage huge amounts of technical information and detail, and be creative in strategic business ideas. They may need to achieve results through efficient delegation, time managing people and products, stocks, etc., while problem solving on the fly. So they need to make fast decisions by results, being results focused and task oriented. Naturally, you might find this leans towards a behavioural style of D or even a DC, though anyone can learn this behaviour even if they aren't particularly natural of it. But that sort of fits quite nicely around that D to DC area. They are quite natural at this. And again, we're not saying that other styles can't do it, but that tends to be a natural fit. Or it might be that the position where a team leader is needed, for example. They may be required to maintain a positive atmosphere for the people, to feel at their best, really. They may not need to deal with huge amounts of detail or reports, but the position requires good communication, good feedback, and a feeling of team unity. This manager might need to achieve KPIs through people, as their product might not be tangible. So they need patience and empathy and the ability to coach and rally their people when morale is down. They still may need to deal with results, of course, but they can learn to plan that even if that is not particularly natural to them. So if recruiting a leader or looking at succession plan, it could be wise to look at their natural position on the eDisc axis as well. Look at the task and the job description. Understand the people that they will be leading and recruit accordingly. This will help you to understand where the challenges might be and where the strengths might lay. If it is succession planning, promoting internally, or even leadership development, by doing this you should be able to identify training gaps or areas that might need support in. So if we have a brief look now at the extended DISC model in its simple form, you can see how the position influences their natural approach to the leadership culture as well. So we know that the axis uses two opposites. One is extrovert, the other is introvert, and one at the top is task versus people, and that gives you these four quadrants. So a D style individual will have tendencies to be sort of naturally decisive and direct, while an I style person will be sociable and natural at influencing. If we cross over to the S quadrant, then the word sincere and steady is often associated with that style of person. And lastly, the C style tends to be comfortable with rules and logic in the way that they behave. So that gives you a very basic overview of the behaviours that can sort of be observed and associated with each of the D, I, S and C styles. So we do know that we have the ability to use all four of the styles in situations, but we do tend to have one or two, maybe even three dominant styles that are more natural and therefore influence how we observably interact and react with certain situations. It's why some activities we might find energizing and others that we might find quite draining. It's why we tend to be more natural at doing things, and some of them is out of our comfort zone with others. This is the same for leadership. We usually have a natural style of leadership that we tend to use depending on where we might sit in the extended DISC axis, as these quadrants, the traits in each quadrant will influence it. So here is the same extended DISC axis that we were just looking at, but this time it's including the appropriate combination leadership culture that their style tends to naturally adapt. So keep in mind people versus task oriented, and also the sides of extrovert, introvert, but I'll be going through the axis and discussing all the leadership cultures individually. But let's have a quick look. So you can see up the top there that you've got D tends to be authoritative, and you work your way around as DI tends to be change, through to informal, participating, supporting, planning, quality, and up the top there, power-centered. So what do all these mean? And again, it's really important to know about the cultures, because when you are recruiting or succession planning, etc., or working out issues of development or communication or conflict, a lot of this will crop up, and a good understanding of it will give you a lot more depth. So let's start with the D style. They tend to be what we call an authoritative style leader or manager. Their authority tends to be based on fear, power and distance. However, they are great in a crisis situation, and can even create a crisis of their own if there isn't one. They are looked at as a things leader and look for results, and may see people as any other resource. They tend to get a bit bored easily, so a crisis is a great way for them to be challenged and make fast decisions, as they're really good at it. They are highly directive, and they tend to have a one-way communication. They are the leader, and therefore they tell the followers. They tend to exert pressure through the setting of demanding goals. Their emphasis is on speed and achievement of results, and they see themselves as very much in charge. So let's go across the down a little bit now to the DI leader, and they are looked at as a change leadership as well. So and this is an ID or a DI. A DI leader tends to be persuasive, charismatic and friendly. They are also competitive and demanding, and they want results. So they are very much future oriented, a great visionary and a big picture thinker. A DI leader tends to be active and energetic, but an extrovert, they have no trouble leading by example. As a rule, they are positive and optimistic leaders and good at creating a positive atmosphere for their people. As a leader, they are seen as a pioneer and early adapter of new ways and new ideas. So an I style, so someone who's a very high I style, has an informal leadership culture. Now their authority is based on what we call charisma and motivation. As a leader, they tend to be comfortable and able to create a relaxed atmosphere for their people. They will often lead through being a friend to their followers, as they are people leaders, so they want and need a lot of contact with people. Creativity, positiveness and good energy tends to be valued more than accuracy and rules at times. So personal relationships are important to them and at times are more emphasized than arriving at the end results. The I-style leader encourages competitiveness through inspiration rather than implying pressure. So the next is an IS or an SI. We tend to put those through as we call them, their approach is participating leadership. They have very much a team ethos and it's very important to them. They are open and friendly leaders and create a very accepting environment. They are often seen as more of a facilitator than a manager, and this can work very well for them with empowering their people. As a leader, they tend to be very hands-on and work with the followers. So a very flat hierarchy often develops. Because they enjoy the feeling of togetherness, there are a lot of shared goals and responsibilities within the group and the organisation. Let's have a look at the next two. So the next two we're looking at, their particular culture, is what we call supporting leadership, and that is typical of an S style. So an S-style leader's authority is based on things like experience, expertise and bureaucratic status. They are comfortable in maintaining routines and generally tend to be stable and service-oriented. They prefer small teams as they have a very participative approach to their leadership. Because this type of leader is so patient, they also have a great ability to guide, teach and develop their people. They are forever patient and so much a helper. Their emphasis is on trust, loyalty and sincerity. So privacy and confidentiality of a team member is important to them and expected in reverse. Help is mutual, given and expected. As a rule, they don't tend to have a strong goal focus, and emphasis is then put on gradual evolution of goals instead. So let's go another step over and having a look at the SC or CS, and we tend to put their approach as a planning type leadership. So these leaders tend to be thoughtful, cautious and structured with their leadership. They generally operate in known areas, recalling past experiences to help them through new issues. Outwardly, they are calm leaders, but internally strong and very determined to do things right. Because they are great planners, they tend to have clear communication of their expectation and objectives. Careful preparation often ensures the objectives are met. So, our last two. So the next approach to the leadership culture is what we call quality leadership, and that tends to sit with with someone who tends to be a very high C. So C style's authority tends to be based on rules, standards and quality. They are seen as, again, a things leader, interested in facts, details and analysis. They have an emphasis on rules and compliance and are not usually share words of inspiration and encouragement. It's not that natural to them. As a leader, they don't feel they need to connect or have relationships as such with their followers, and therefore tends to be a little bit remote or emotionally disconnected. If you think about what an I-style person needs, then this can be difficult for them if, as an I-style likes to connect and a C doesn't find it particularly necessary. So a quality style leader like this is very systematic in their approach, and that tends to ensure that everyone knows what is expected. In their case, they look at the systems as a leader, not so much themselves. Hence, they keep their systems highly detailed, structured, and enforce the rules. So the last one is what we call power-centered leadership, and that tends to sit in the CDDC area there, right up the top. So the CD style leader is a power-centered leader. To them, the position holds the authority. They have high individualism, and again, their leadership style sees that being more remote, sees them being a bit more remote from their followers. They develop a formal environment and hierarchy because that's very important. They have standards for themselves, and this is transferred in what they do expect of others as well. Conformity is expected, and they tend to have very little tolerance as it's quite a inflexible, I guess, environment for them. This type of leader will bring in rigid structures and be at times quite slow to react. They prefer to think issues through if they think they are of enough importance to warrant their time. So understanding what type of leadership culture you or someone tends to sway towards is a great step in being more aware. All of these types of leaders have their strengths that they bring to the table and also their development areas. So once you know some development areas, the next thing is to look at some potential ways to improve either your or their leadership style. The next slide outlines a few of these, so let's have a quick look. So the first one, of course, we'll just start off with good old D there. So we said before how important awareness is for the leader to know both their strengths and their less natural traits. Again, these development areas can be very unique to the individual, but there does appear to be some key traits that particular styles need to develop. So we'll look at the four main styles, the D, I, S and C again, and pick up a few key points for development for them. So a D style would be a more effective leader if they would ask the subordinate what the topics of discussions are. For example, let some control go to others by letting them set the agenda and listening. Another helpful hint would be let subordinates develop solutions. Give them a chance to solve issues in their own way. It may be different to yours, but not necessarily wrong. Avoid being superior to others. Others have strengths too, and of course no one enjoys the feeling of intimidation or loss of confidence in themselves. It may even stop much valued discussion if you waive your superiority over people. Last tip would be to avoid talking about negative issues. Try looking at the positive side of what people have done first. They may have worked very hard at it. If you set patterns up of negativity, they might stop sharing and involving you. It's okay to discuss the negatives, but try a sandwich approach. Say a positive, then a negative in the middle, and then end on a positive again. Let's have a look at some tips for the I style manager. Potentially they could be a bit more effective if they did make their own goals a bit clearer. So take some time to plan your goals. Don't just inherit them from others and wait for them to be set for you. Targets or KPIs are a great measurement for you to stay on track and gain results. Follow up. Again, planning and taking the time to remember to finish things. Maybe look at time management training, prioritize and plan the small things too. Another one is have patience to listen to your team member. Take time to concentrate and engage with people that are talking to you. Put pens down, stop typing and give them time. Engage with them. Eyes tend to multitask and that can be frustrating for someone needing your attention. Also discuss negative issues. While being positive around people can be really motivating for them, there are times that risks and negative issues do need to be discussed and pointed out as well. Discussing negative issues helps to ensure that all the angles might be seen, and mentioning them doesn't always mean that that will end in conflict. Let's have a look again at the S-style manager and how they could be a little bit more effective as well. A few tips. So firstly, maybe be a little bit more clear on expressing your own opinions. So share information with people. Your opinions are good and you have the ability to see things from many angles. So share this with people. When they challenge you, it's okay. You usually will have proof or facts that you've gathered on the way. So again, share them. Hold on to your own opinions. Your opinions are as good as everyone else's. Listen to them, but don't discredit yourself. Lastly, don't get into the get into chatter and avoid the issues. Try not to hide behind others' chit-chat or your own. Avoiding issues can give the perception that you're a bit of a pushover or haven't prepared or planned for all the different angles when usually you actually have. So lastly, now let's just look at the C-style manager and what possibly could make them a more effective leader. They could be a better or more effective leader if they would emphasize the positive issues. Finding the mistakes in people's work or being constantly critical can actually be very tiresome on people, especially if they are exploring new angles or ideas. So find positive things to say. Oopsie daisy, sorry about that, I haven't triggered the rest of them. So again, the second tip would be basically talk about your own feelings and thoughts a little bit more. Again, express your opinions and feelings. Bottling them up and feeling frustrated is not good for anyone. It's also a way for people to feel that you are disconnected from them at times. So feelings are as important as the task to some people, so just remember that. Another tip would be not to appeal to the rules of the discussion and other people. Rules are everywhere around and often for a good reason, but not everyone sees them as being a priority like the C-style. Some flexibility is needed, especially when creativity and development of ideas are concerned. And the last one is quite simple, and that is smile. Sometimes life does seem very serious, but a simple smile can go a long way for people to feel connected and perceive you as being more approachable. So of course there's lots of other things that the styles could do to help improve their leadership or their being effective leaders, but in the end it comes down to a combination of being a manager of tasks and a leader of people and a myriad of other things as well to help make a successful leader. So in summary, there really is no best fit or ideal behavioural extended DISC leader, and they do not come from one particular section on the quadrant at all. They do have their own natural tendency. As a leader, we require them to be adaptable depending on the situation that is present. This means that they may need to stretch themselves all around the diamond and at times to cope with the situation, and they can also use a high amount of energy as it's not natural to them. At times they may need to be a people leader and other times a manager that is dealing with results and fast decisions. However, we do know that being self-aware for a leader or manager is vital. Knowing their own areas of development, how they might react under pressure, and where their natural ability lies is vital for finding a balance between the driving manager and a people-enhancing leader. Lastly, we talked over the leadership cultures of each combination style. If you are a leader yourself or even recruiting or developing one, get to know these cultures as they really help to understand what kind of leader you are or they might be. The better you know them, the better you'll understand what you might need in that situation. So obviously Extended DISC has hundreds of leadership and management competencies that can be included in your FINCS reports, and we're happy to work with you to help you look at different competencies that you can put in as well for the relevant information. For those of you that are in EDOS and are listening, don't forget that in the software you can actually click the 2 competency pages for management as well, and that will go into your report. But obviously if you're in EDOS, it might be time that you look at FINCS, for example. So for those of you who may not be clients with us as yet and feel free to ask any questions, if I can help determine any of the management reports or help get you to understand it for your ideal situations, and either Safi or I can help customize them. So for any information, feel free to contact us at Extended DISC. Now, usually I do question and answers about now after the webinar, but it sounds like I'm not able to hear you, so even when I take it off mute. So I'll leave it for now. If you would like to, you are very welcome to email me any questions that you might have on becky.carr@hrprofiling.com, and I'd be happy to look at it. And this webinar should be available on the VIP pages under General Resources in the next day or two. So thanks for joining me, and again thanks for listening. It's always a pleasure, and hopefully actually next month Safi is doing the webinar on design, Finks Design. Thanks everyone.